So after my back surgery, ironically, right before the pandemic hit, I spent 5 weeks in bed, doped out of my mind on opioids, and one of the hobbies that I picked, because it's something I could do laying in bed, was picking locks. Being able to open padlocks and then going larger and larger from that. So I thought I'd give just a quick demonstration of what I learned drugged out of my mind laying in a bed for 5 weeks. So we have my basic toolkit. Now that I know what I know, I use maybe 3 of these, and then you make your own spreader, your own tension rod. We'll talk about that. Okay, I was smart and I bought a kit when I very first started. This is an exact replica of a master lock, only in solid plexiglass or whatever the hell plastic it is. But the beauty is you can see the pin arrangements, the cylinder, how it works. And so at first you were paying a lot of attention to what was going on there. I just opened it. What you can see is in the off position, all of the pins set on top of springs. They're different sizes, different lengths. So we'll start with this lock just to give you an idea. Okay, the tensioner is actually the secret to everything. The lockpick is incredibly easy to learn. It's the tensioner that is very hard to learn. So what you're doing is you're putting it on the far end of the lock so that you can get a tool in to manipulate the pins. And then using an index finger, for some reason I like using my thumb, you're applying just a quarter of a gram or less pressure. Just a little bit of pressure in the direction that the key would turn the lock. The reason you're doing that is while you're manipulating the pins with the lockpick, if you get to a pin and actually find the place where it needs to be pushed up, you want a teeny bit of pressure on the cylinder so it holds that pin up instead of letting it fall back down while you work on the other 7 pins. Now, a little too much pressure and you bind the pins and then they get wedged. And what you do then is release all of your thumb pressure. You keep just enough so your tool doesn't fall out, and it lets all the pins reset back to 0. You do that a lot. If you're not successful getting all 8 pins within a couple of seconds, you've jammed a pin and you got to start over by releasing pressure off of your tension rod, which is why this tension rod is a spring steel, and it's why we pretty much all of us build our own. So what we're going to do on this, you can reset this, by the way. I can move pins, so it's never the same lock to learn on. So it's not a memorized task. What you're memorizing is the feel. You want to know the feel of finding the pin in the right location. Most of the time, the number one error is you put too much tension on this tension rod. And that happens when you're stressed, like, committing a crime, or just stressed in general. That's why I find this real zen, real meditative to do this kind of thing, because you really have to not overpressure. What you do then is you have to release and put every pin back in its original position and then start over completely. You end up dropping this rod a lot because it's spring loaded, being a spring steel. So again, the lightest of pressure. And you find all 8 pins, and it's over. So I graduated from that. Here's a master lock, small one, but storage shed, storage garage, whatever, gate, same thing. Put the tension rod in at the far end away from where the gate is, where the actual key would go in, and you apply just a teeny bit of pressure in the direction that the key would turn. And then you can either use a pick if it's a really hard lock and go after each of the 8 to 10 pins individually, which is a pain in the ass, or you can use a technique which they call raking, where if your pressure is just right, so it's just barely enough to hold a pin up once you get it in the right position, what you do with a rake is just, as it says, you just rake over all the pins and they jump. And your hope is that if your tension rod, the most important part, is right amount of tension, that the pins, you'll get 7 out of 8 locked into position just by a raking position, and then you generally have to just go find that one stubborn one. So we're going to try on a master lock, we're going to try raking. So again, just a tiny amount of pressure. So what was that? 3 seconds? 4 seconds? Master lock broke. I just bought this one today. This is a Brinks. Brinks are a bitch. They're built a lot like the Master Lock, where they're just many levels of solid metal, except for obviously the core in the center, and then you just know that on the fat side there are pins, springs, and different sized plugs that go into the cylinder, keeping it from turning. Every lock's the same thing. Front door, all of them. Car locks are substantially different, and I've got some bizarre tools for those, because you've got to actually manipulate the same concept of pins and springs, but you got to do it on both sides simultaneously. I've yet to be able to open a car, no matter how hard I've tried. I'll get there. Okay, so this is a Brinks that I just bought, so I don't know anything about its pin configuration. So we're going to take my homemade little tension rod here. Hang on, I had it backwards. So it's got a little flex, and it's good. And we're going to start with a rake tool and hope we don't have to do it pin by pin. What was that, 2 seconds? So much for Brinks and Master Lock.